On Thursday, November 19, 2009, the Peruvian police held a press conference showing evidence from a raid that they did on a Peruvian gang that was killing people in the jungle and draining fat from the corpses to sell on the black market for use in cosmetics, according to police. The first container, which still had the Inca Kola label on it, was filled with a thick, yellow-brown liquid. The other bottle held a dark fluid with some gritty pieces. The Peruvian National Police had set up an evidence table for the cameras, with a pair of 1-liter soda bottles, a half-dozen small canisters, several coils of safety fuse, and a few pieces of dynamite, all labeled with display cards in block print. As he spoke to the assembled crowd, General Eusebio Felix Morga, the director of Peru's Criminal Investigations Branch, balled his hand into a fist. "We have dismantled a criminal group that traffics in human fat," he claimed. 3 suspects were detained, with at least one confessing. According to police, the group was based in the highland forest region of Huánuco, roughly 160 miles from Lima. They would approach passers-by on country roads and entice them into the jungle with the promise of jobs. A victim would be bludgeoned to death, his skull and limbs severed with a machete, and his eviscerated torso hanging from metal hooks in a secluded improvised laboratory. Votive candles warmed his abdominal flesh from the inside, causing the rendered fat to drip through a funnel and pool in a basin on the floor. A drawing of how all of this was meant to work was revealed to reporters at a press conference on November 19. There was also video evidence. Elmer Segundo Castillejas, 29, was escorting a column of police officers across a valley of coca plants after being captured a few weeks previously at a bus terminal in Lima. He gestures with his chained hands to a pile of human remains. Ribs, thigh bones, and the decomposing head of Abel Matos Aranda, who was slain somewhere in the Andes in September. Further specifics were hazy. General Felix Morga reported that 6 members of the gang remained at large, including the ringleader, a guy thought to have been involved in the activity since the 1980s. He estimated that up to 60 Peruvians were murdered for their fat. Castillejas and his associates claimed to be paid $15,000 per bottle of human grease by a couple of Italian mafiosi acting as middlemen in the European cosmetics sector. The material, according to the police, was being utilized for a line of skin softeners. The accused were referred to as brujas, or witches, by the case's primary prosecutor, Jorge Sanz Quiroz. Other officials, however, adopted a more inflammatory appellation to characterize individuals in custody: pale-skinned vampires who kidnap peasants and suck out their fat with tubes and needles, according to an Indian mythology dating back more than 400 years. "It's an Andean myth that we've now proven," a government spokeswoman said. A gang of Pistacos had been apprehended by the cops. The official story began to unravel within a few days. Early reports called into question its primary premise, that there might be a market for stolen blubber at all. What could Westerners possibly do with the flesh of Andean peasants? With obesity rates in the industrialized world as high as 25% or 30%. Weren't we already swimming in our own fat? Yes, a surgeon in Paris or New York may place a teaspoon of fat along the creases along the sides of a patient's mouth during a facelift. And it's true that some women now have fatty tissue injected directly into their breasts in a procedure known as natural breast augmentation. However, for these treatments, surgeons use the patient's own fat, which is taken from her abdomen or thighs. Every day, hundreds of liters of surplus human fat are discarded by liposuction clinics in Peru, according to medical specialists. What about the body parts the Pistacos left behind if they did manage to fence their stolen grease? For example, kidneys, livers, and lungs are in-demand organs that would command a fortune on the underground market. More information emerged as reporters probed deeper into the story. Despite accusations from Peruvian authorities that a global manhunt for the 2 mafiosi was underway, BBC Mundo claimed that Interpol had no information of the case. The Daily La Replica reported on November 30 that local officials in Huánuco, a province long known for its cocaine traders and drug violence, were unaware of any murder spree until the general conducted his press conference. The authorities accused the Pistaco gang of hacking up 60 people in their jungle cabin, although there was evidence for only one killing Abel Matos Aranda's decapitation. That murder now appeared to be the result of a local revenge rather than an international scheme. Then there was speculation of a cover-up. Ricardo Uceda, an investigative journalist, had published a shocking exposé regarding a government-sponsored murder squad in the northern city of Trujillo 3 days before the Pistaco arrests were reported. Officers there had been involved in the methodical execution of 46 suspected offenders since 2007, he wrote. Could Peru's Interior Minister, Octavio Salazar, have contrived the whole Pixteco saga as a ruse? He'd once been in charge of Trujillo's police unit. Now he was accused of using the gory Huánuco case as a smokescreen. In an interview with Time, one lawmaker called the gambit great for its level of ignorance, others demanded Salazar's resignation. The accusations piled up. On December 1, the leader of Peru's National Police Force, General Felix Burga, resigned, citing his embarrassment over the Pixteco inquiry. 75 officers had been investigating the human fat murders. Now the newspapers were declaring the whole thing a fraud. In a radio appearance, Huánuco's governor termed it the biggest lie in the universe. Peru's president finally talked to reporters about the arrests in Lima on December 3. General Felix Burga had made a mistake by speaking to the press, he claimed. And that claiming 60 people had been slain was an exaggeration. The rest of the story was on the level. The fat, the bones, and possibly even the 2 Italians. At the start of it all, there was a grain of truth, says the narrator. In the meantime, scientific examinations revealed that the yellowish liquid in the soda bottles was human grease. Lead prosecutor Jorge Sanz Quiroz told El Mundo that more than one skeleton had been discovered in the shallow bush burial, and that the guys now in arrest had confessed to collecting fat for years without coercion. Furthermore, the suspects had never claimed to be selling to the cosmetics sector, according to Sanz Quiroz. They told the cops that shamans and sorcerers were buying the fat to use in satanic rituals. Top organized crime investigator Felix Morga announced that 4 individuals had been captured and admitted to killing up to 60 people. He claimed they were getting hundreds of dollars per liter for their fat. But it now appears that the horrific narrative was nothing more than a big fat lie. Sold on during an unusual press conference, authorities displayed 2 bottles of human fat and a photo of a beheaded skull. Mr. Morga informed reporters that 4 individuals had confessed to heinous killings, recreating an Andean tale about the Pixtecos, legendary killers who murdered people on lonely highways to take their fat. However, a complete absence of proof 2 weeks later revealed the police account to be more fiction than actuality. As a result, Peru's police chief, Miguel Hidalgo, declared that Mr. Morga would be placed on indefinite leave for sullying his unit's reputation. Initial misgivings were exacerbated when authorities in the area where the atrocities were allegedly committed claimed they had no knowledge of a gang of criminals murdering individuals for their fat. In a region where drug trafficking and violence are rampant, they were only able to substantiate one of the dozens of claimed disappearances. Mr. Morga and the head of the anti-kidnapping team claimed the fat was sold for thousands of dollars in the European underground market that supplies the cosmetics sector, but they couldn't prove it. Medical authorities denied this hypothesis, claiming that human fat has no monetary worth and that injecting it into another person could be dangerous. According to some anthropologists, the police used an old Peruvian myth to explain crimes that the police had failed to completely examine. According to some observers, this tale is only one of many inflated or made-up news items used as a smokescreen to divert attention away from Peru's true problems. Thanks for watching this episode of Radio Mind about the Peruvian gang killers who murdered people to extract their fat. Shockingly, it was all made up by a crime investigator Felix Morga, who ended up getting himself fired for this wild story. Until next time, be safe and remember, don't let everyday stresses kill your spirit and imagination.